It starts like any other day, until it doesn't. Celeste Monroe, a black woman in her 50s, steps out of her Buick and walks up the stone steps of the Charleston Federal Courthouse. She's calm, composed, and completely unaware that she's about to be assaulted by those sworn to uphold the law. They think she's nobody. Celeste's silver coils are twisted neatly along her scalp, her navy blazer pressed, her stride purposeful. She doesn't wear her judicial robe outside the courtroom. She prefers to enter buildings as a citizen, quiet, observant, blending in. But today, at the main security checkpoint, Deputy Hank Riker narrows his eyes as she approaches. He doesn't recognize her. He doesn't care to. "Ma'am, step out of line," he says, voice gruff. Celeste pauses. "Is there a problem, officer?" Riker's gaze sweeps over her, searching for a reason to assert control. "No ID displayed. You can't just waltz into a federal building looking like that," he mutters. Celeste calmly produces her federal credentials. The badge gleams, but Riker barely glances at it before slipping it into his pocket. "I'd like that returned," she says, her voice even. He steps closer, sneering. "You in a rush to get somewhere, sweetheart?" The word lands like a slap. A younger guard, Officer Lila Torres, shifts nervously by the X-ray scanner, but says nothing. Riker steers Celeste toward a side hallway, away from the foot traffic, into a windowless screening room. The air is cool and still. There's a steel chair, a rolling cart of scanning equipment, and a pair of clippers sitting idle on the edge. Celeste's heart thuds once in her chest. "I don't consent to this," she says. "You have no legal cause to detain me." "You're acting suspicious. That's cause enough," Riker replies, motioning to the chair. Celeste doesn't move. He leans in. "You think that badge means something?" "Not here." Two other officers enter. One grabs her left wrist, another her right. Celeste's voice rises. "This is a violation. I want your names." No one answers. Riker grabs the clippers. "What are you doing?" she demands. "Standard protocol. You could be hiding something in that mop," he says, gesturing to her hair. Celeste tries to rise, but a sharp grip pushes her back down. The clippers buzz to life. Before she can react, she feels the cold vibration on her scalp. A thick coil of silver hair falls to the floor. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She sits as her dignity is stripped away, strand by strand, watching it collect in piles on the tiled floor. Laughter echoes from one of the guards. "She looks better already," he mutters. "Should have come in here with some respect," Riker says, wiping loose hairs from his sleeve. "Now you look more presentable." Celeste's fists clench in her lap, knuckles pale. But her voice, when it returns, is steady. "You'll regret this." Riker leans down, sneering. "People like you always say that." Then, just as quickly as it began, it ends. Riker opens the door and gestures back toward the hall. "You're free to go. Courtroom's that way," he says mockingly. Celeste rises slowly, hands trembling only slightly. She takes her badge back from Riker's desk without asking and walks out into the hall. Her steps are even, her expression unreadable. But in her chest, something burns hotter than rage, deeper than humiliation. It is purpose, and in just a few minutes, that purpose will change everything. Because what Riker doesn't know is this: she isn't there to observe. She isn't there as a defendant. She is the judge, and she is about to take her seat on the bench. The clippers buzz in her ears long after she leaves that cold, windowless room. Every step toward the courtroom feels heavier than the last. Not because of fear, but because of fury held in check. Her scalp tingles where her hair once grew, years in the making, rooted in family, in history, in identity, now gone. Uneven tufts are all that remain. The silence in the hall is suffocating. Celeste passes two clerks who look at her, then quickly look away. They have heard, maybe they have even seen, but not one of them has spoken up. She doesn't stop walking. She won't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Down the corridor, a low hum of voices filters from the courtroom's double doors. It's a high-profile morning, a police misconduct hearing, national attention, heavy press. Celeste is supposed to enter from the private chambers, her robe waiting inside. But today, that plan doesn't matter. She stops just outside the courtroom, takes a deep breath, then pushes both doors open wide. The courtroom stills instantly. Heads turn, and then the realization begins to ripple. The woman they watched be escorted through the hall like a suspect. The woman whose scalp bears the evidence of brutality is not a victim of circumstance. She is the judge. Celeste steps behind the bench, her face calm, cold even. The kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from precision. She reaches for her robe, folded neatly over the arm of her chair. She doesn't ask for help. She doesn't wait for ceremony. She slips it on herself, one slow movement at a time. It rests on her shoulders like armor. She turns to the court clerk. "Is the docket ready?" The clerk's voice cracks. "Yes, Your Honor." Celeste nods once, then lowers herself into her chair, the leather groaning softly beneath her. She looks straight ahead. Her gaze never touches the man who humiliated her. Not yet. Not directly. We will begin today with preliminary testimony on Case 2371F, United States versus Charleston Police Department, she says, as if nothing has happened. Charges of abuse of power, excessive force, and civil rights violations. All parties present? A murmur of "Yes, Your Honor" echoes back. The attorneys shift in their seats. Some are wide-eyed, others look guilty, and some look angry. Angry that a black woman had dared walk in after what they assumed had destroyed her. She ignores them all. We will proceed. The first witness is called. An officer who had been on duty during the protest in question. A man who had pushed an elderly veteran to the ground during a peaceful demonstration, breaking 2 of his ribs. Celeste listens carefully, takes notes, asks no questions. Not yet. From the corner of her eye, she sees Riker slowly backing toward the rear of the courtroom. His hands twitch at his belt. His legs shift restlessly. He looks like he wants to disappear, like he knows deep in his gut that his moment is coming. He is right. After the second witness, she calls a recess. The courtroom empties in a daze. Even the lawyers whisper like they are afraid to speak too loud. Celeste stays seated. After several minutes, when only her clerk, 2 officers, and Riker remain in the room, she finally looks at him. "Deputy Riker," she says, voice sharp as glass. He stops mid-step. "Step forward." His mouth opens, stammering. Yes, Your Honor." She motions to the open center of the courtroom. "Now." He obeys, moving like a man walking toward a cliff's edge. "State your full name for the record." He blinks. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Hank Riker." "How long have you served as bailiff at this courthouse?" 14 years. She taps a pen against her legal pad. Once, twice. Then she leans forward. "And in those 14 years, how many women have you assaulted in that screening room?" The color drains from his face. Your Honor, I didn't know." That's not what I asked. He looks around for help. None comes. How many complaints have been filed against you, Deputy Riker? I'm not sure. Celeste's voice rises, not in volume, but in precision. 12 formal complaints, all buried, all dismissed, because you hid behind procedure and protocol. His mouth trembles. I didn't know who you were, I thought. And that's the problem, isn't it? She snaps, her voice cracking the stillness. You thought I was no one, just another black woman you could bully, shave, humiliate, for sport. The room is dead silent. You didn't even bother to ask for my name. Riker tries to speak, but no sound comes. Celeste rises from the bench. Because of you, this courthouse, this supposed temple of justice, has been stained. Because of your actions, the sanctity of this court is now under question. And because you assaulted a federal judge in her own courthouse, you are now the subject of a criminal investigation, effective immediately. She turns to the officers standing by the exit. Escort Deputy Riker into custody. Separate from general population. Formal charges to follow. The officers move quickly, cuffs already in hand. No! Wait! Riker shouts. You can't do this. But he is wrong. She already has. The courtroom doesn't feel like a courtroom anymore. Not after what has just happened. Deputy Hank Riker, once a fixture of control and intimidation in that courthouse, is now gone, escorted out in cuffs by 2 silent officers. His badge surrendered, his power stripped, but the aftershock still lingers. It is in the silence, in the way the ceiling fans hum a little too loudly, in the sidelong glances shared between staff who had known for years and said nothing. Celeste Monroe sits back in her chair, fingers laced together over the bench, her robe now draped over her like steel. There is no going back to the way things were before, and truthfully, she doesn't want to, because something has shifted, not just inside her, but inside the entire room. Her clerk enters quietly, holding a fresh stack of notes. Your Honor, she says cautiously, the next set of witnesses are being prepped. Celeste nods. How long do we have? About 8 minutes. Celeste looks past her out into the now empty gallery, rows of wooden benches, the places where jurors, journalists, and the public will return any moment now. But she can still feel Riker's presence, like an oil stain on polished marble. She exhales slowly. This day has already defied every expectation, and it's only mid-morning. The door creaks behind her. Celeste turns. A young woman steps inside, maybe early 20s. Glasses fogged from rushing through the lobby. One of the interns. Her name is Megan. Smart, quiet. Never spoke much unless spoken to. She looks pale. Celeste gives a small nod. Everything okay? Megan hesitates, then closes the door behind her and steps forward. I wanted to say I saw it, she says, voice barely above a whisper. What happened with Deputy Riker this morning? Outside the screening room. I didn't know what to do. I should have said something. I was scared. Celeste doesn't answer right away. She just studies the young woman's trembling hands. Then she says gently, Thank you for telling me. That matters. I didn't stop it. No, Celeste replies. But you're speaking now. That's more than most. Megan looks like she might cry, but she straightens her shoulders and adds, If you need me to testify, I will. Celeste reaches across the desk and places a hand over the girl's. Just for a moment. No words. Just warmth. Then the courtroom doors creak again, this time with more weight. The public is returning. Celeste stands. "All rise," the clerk calls out, her voice steadier this time. Everyone does. Even the ones who didn't want to. Even the ones who had once laughed at jokes Riker made behind closed doors. Celeste resumes her seat. Court is back in session. As the next witness takes the stand, the atmosphere in the room has changed subtly, sharply. The power is no longer in question. This isn't just a hearing anymore. It's a reckoning. The witness is a black father named Howard Briggs, mid-40s, a warehouse foreman, hands rough from decades of labor. His eyes are hollow but determined. He is there to testify about how his 17-year-old son had been tackled and pinned during a peaceful protest. By the same officers now seated at the defense table, one of them had crushed the boy's windpipe with his knee. The teen survived, barely, but still can't speak above a whisper. That had been 9 months ago. Howard sits on the witness stand and tells the court everything. How they had begged for paramedics. How they were told, "He'll be fine, he's faking." How no one listened. And how, when the footage came out, none of the officers were disciplined. Celeste doesn't interrupt once. She doesn't need to, because every word the man speaks is a blade, slicing through the courtroom, leaving no one untouched. When he finishes, Celeste leans forward. "Mr. Briggs, thank you for your courage. I know this isn't easy." He nods, his voice cracking. "I just want to know that it meant something, that someone is finally listening." Celeste looks at him, not from the bench, not as a judge, but as someone who knows exactly what it feels like to be silenced. "You've been heard," she says. A few minutes later, after he steps down and walks slowly past the officers who had nearly taken his son's life, Celeste calls for another short recess. Her chambers are quiet, almost too quiet. She sits for a moment, staring at her reflection in the mirror above the wash basin. Her uneven hair, the raw patch just above her left ear. The woman in the mirror doesn't look like a judge. She looks like someone who has just been through war. But maybe that's what justice is. Not a performance of poise, but a battle for truth. One she has no intention of losing. There's a knock. Her clerk opens the door halfway. "Your Honor, the U.S. Attorney's Office just submitted a sealed motion. They want to escalate charges against Riker immediately. Civil rights violations under federal law." Celeste doesn't blink. "Good. Accept it." As the door shuts, she finally allows herself a breath. Not out of relief, but resolve. Today isn't over. Not even close. Because the courtroom may have seen Riker fall, but they haven't seen what comes next. And the real reckoning is still to come. The courtroom is full again, but it isn't the same room anymore. Something unspoken has shifted. It hangs in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. The kind of weight that makes people sit straighter in their chairs, speak a little quieter, and think twice before assuming they know who holds the power. Celeste steps back onto the bench with a presence that is undeniable. No bailiff announces her this time, no ceremonial flourish, just the sound of her shoes against the hardwood floor, and the quiet rustle of her robe as she takes her seat. Everyone rises instinctively. She doesn't speak right away. She just looks out over the room at the defendants, the press, the attorneys, and the silent crowd of onlookers who have returned, some still wide-eyed from what they witnessed earlier. They are waiting to see what she will do next, how far she'll go, whether this is going to be a moment or a movement. She taps the gavel once, Court is now in session, she says, and just like that, everything settles. She turns her attention to the attorneys seated at the prosecution table. Call your next witness. The room hushes again as an officer, Lieutenant Daniel Cook, is sworn in, tall, built like a linebacker, face clean-shaven, posture rigid. He sits down, clears his throat, and folds his hands in his lap. Celeste studies him for a long second. She knows the type. Proud, polished, trained to lie with a smile and never break a sweat. The prosecutor begins her questioning, methodical and precise. Lieutenant Cook, you were present at the demonstration on May 14th of last year, correct? Yes, ma'am. And during that time, you oversaw a team of 7 officers? Yes, that's correct. Did you personally authorize the use of force against protesters? Cook leans forward slightly, speaking into the mic like he's giving a press briefing. I authorized non-lethal crowd control measures after protesters became aggressive. There was yelling, pushing. Some were armed with bottles and rocks. Any injuries reported from your team? No, ma'am. And the injuries sustained by protesters? Minor, mostly bruises. Celeste's voice cuts through before the prosecutor can move on. Lieutenant Cook. He turns toward her. Yes, Your Honor. Do you consider a crushed trachea to be a minor injury? The question hangs in the air. Well, no, ma'am, of course not. Celeste leans forward slightly. Then why did your official incident report describe it as a soft tissue trauma consistent with resistance? Cook hesitates. That's standard language. It was based on initial impressions. Initial impressions from whom? He shifts in his seat. I believe it was Officer Valdez who filled out that section. Celeste keeps her gaze locked on him. And did you review and approve that language? A pause. Then, yes, Your Honor. Knowing that the victim was 17 years old and unarmed? Cook opens his mouth, closes it, then finally answers, yes. Her tone never wavers. Do you believe justice was served that day? I believe we followed protocol. She sits back in her chair. That wasn't the question. Cook clears his throat again. With respect, Your Honor, I can't answer that. That's not my role. Celeste nods slowly. No, it's mine. She turns to the prosecution. You may proceed. The rest of the testimony is dry, clinical, but every word lands like a blow. It isn't just the facts. It's the way they try to make them sound normal, acceptable, routine. When the recess is called again, the gallery buzzes with whispers, reporters typing furiously, advocates taking notes. A woman near the back clutches her chest, silently mouthing "thank you" when Celeste walks past. In her chambers, she takes off her robe and hangs it carefully. Then she stares at it for a moment longer than usual. The way it looks on the hanger, so plain, so harmless, and yet, outside that room, that robe carried weight. It changed everything. When she wore it, people stood. They listened. They feared her power. But just 2 hours earlier, wearing the same face, the same heart, the same dignity without the robe, she was assaulted and stripped like she didn't matter. That contradiction lives in her bones now. It burns behind her eyes and echoes in her pulse. There's a knock. Your Honor? It's her clerk again. There's someone asking to speak with you. From the DOJ. They said it's urgent. Celeste straightens. Send them in. A man in a gray suit steps through the door. Calm, composed. He hands over a sealed envelope. Judge Monroe, I'm with the Office of Civil Rights. I was dispatched the moment reports surfaced about this morning's incident. Fast response, Celeste says, unfolding the letter. This courthouse is under federal review. What happened in that screening room is more than misconduct. It's a Title 18 violation, and now that we know the victim was a federal judge, he trails off. Celeste doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. The man continues. We're opening an immediate investigation into Charleston District Courthouse staff, prior complaints, suppression of reports, and potential obstruction. Good, she says quietly. Start with the supervisors who buried those 12 complaints against Riker. Then look at the judges who signed off. He nods, as if he already knew she'd say that. Oh, and Judge Monroe, he adds, pausing at the door. You should know. The footage of this morning has gone viral. It's everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, social. Even some folks in the Senate are talking about it. Celeste gives the faintest shake of her head. I didn't do it for them. He smiles. No, that's why it matters. When he leaves, she sinks slowly into her chair. Out there, in the courtroom, the next set of defense attorneys are gathering. She can already hear their shoes against the floor, the nervous shuffle of papers, the last-minute whispers between counsel. The fight isn't over, but she's ready. Because today isn't just about exposing one racist bailiff. It's about pulling the mask off an entire system. And it's far from done unraveling. The courtroom is packed to capacity now. Word has spread, first about the arrest, then the video, then the woman behind it. The federal judge who walked into a courthouse and was treated like she didn't belong, only to take her rightful seat on the bench minutes later, stripped, humiliated, but unbroken. Everyone wants to see what will happen next. Camera crews hover outside. Reporters line the back rows. Civil rights attorneys have flown in from Atlanta, D.C., even Chicago. You can feel the pressure in the air. It isn't just about a case anymore. This is bigger. It's history and justice crashing into each other in real time. Judge Celeste Monroe stands just behind the bench as the clerk whispers in her ear, "They're here, the defense attorneys. They're asking for special counsel." Celeste raises an eyebrow. On what grounds? They say the case is tainted, that the judge is personally compromised. A slow breath leaves her lips. Of course they'd try to flip it. They can't deny the facts, so they attack the face delivering them. Celeste nods once. Let them ask. I'll give them their answer on the record. She steps out to a courtroom humming with tension. All rise. The room obeys. She doesn't look left or right. She just walks, takes her place, taps her gavel once. Be seated. The air shifts like a held breath being released. A defense attorney in a pinstripe suit rises, confident, late 40s, one of those voices trained for both jury trials and TV interviews. Your Honor, before we proceed, we'd like to make a formal request. Due to recent developments, Celeste cuts in. You mean the arrest of Deputy Riker and the incident in the courthouse hallway? He hesitates. Yes, Your Honor. And your concern is what, exactly? He clears his throat. That these events may present a conflict of interest, a question of judicial impartiality. The gallery bristles. A low murmur swells. Celeste doesn't blink. You're suggesting that because I was assaulted this morning, I can't carry out the duties of my position? I'm suggesting, he says carefully, that the perception of bias— Celeste holds up a hand. Let me stop you right there. She stands, walks slowly to the edge of the bench. I was publicly assaulted, humiliated. Not for what I said, not for what I did, but for who I am. Because someone saw a black woman walking into a courtroom and decided she couldn't possibly hold power. She pauses, lets it sink in. And what did I do in response? I took my seat. I conducted this hearing. I followed every rule, every code of conduct. I have been calm, measured, respectful, even when others were not. The attorney's jaw clenches. Celeste continues, voice sharper now. You know what real bias looks like, counselor? Real bias is a man using clippers to shave off a woman's hair without cause, without warrant, and without a single question about her name. Real bias is 12 ignored complaints from people who looked like me, buried by this very institution. She leans forward, eyes locked on his. If you want to challenge my impartiality, file your motion. But know this, I will not recuse myself. Not today. Not for this. The room is silent. The attorney sits, defeated. Celeste returns to her seat. We will proceed. The rest of the day is a blur of testimony, cross-examinations, and legal arguments. But the tone has changed. The power dynamic has shifted. The officers on trial no longer look so sure of themselves. The public watches, rapt, as Celeste presides with a dignity that cannot be stripped away. During a break, a young black girl approaches Celeste in the hallway. She's maybe 12, hair in neat braids, eyes wide with awe. Are you really the judge? She whispers. Celeste kneels to meet her gaze. Yes, I am. The girl nods, a shy smile spreading across her face. You're brave. Celeste squeezes her hand. So are you. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. As the trial nears its end, the evidence is overwhelming. The officers' actions are exposed, their lies unraveled. The jury deliberates for only a few hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupts in a mix of relief and tears. Celeste delivers the sentence with a steady voice, her words echoing through the chamber. Justice is not vengeance. It is the restoration of dignity, the affirmation of truth, and the promise that no one is above the law. The verdict reverberates far beyond the courthouse walls. News outlets across the country broadcast the story of the judge who was humiliated, then rose to deliver justice. Civil rights leaders call Celeste Monroe a symbol of resilience. Her image, robe on, head bare, eyes unbroken, becomes an emblem for a new movement. But for Celeste, the real victory is quieter, deeper. In the days that follow, the Department of Justice launches a sweeping investigation into courthouse abuses. Supervisors who buried complaints are removed. New policies are enacted. Body cameras in screening rooms, independent oversight, and mandatory anti-bias training. The courthouse, once a place of silent suffering, becomes a beacon of reform. Celeste receives letters from across the nation. Survivors of similar abuses thank her for her courage. Young law students, especially women of color, write to say they now believe there's a place for them in the halls of justice. Celeste answers as many as she can, her words always the same. Your voice matters. Never let anyone take your dignity. One morning, Celeste stands before her mirror, running her fingers over the new growth on her scalp. The hair will return, but the lesson remains. She is not defined by what was taken from her, but by what she refused to surrender, her integrity, her purpose, her hope. At the next session, Celeste enters the courtroom to a standing ovation. The staff, the public, even the attorneys rise, not out of fear, but out of respect. She takes her seat, her presence a quiet force. She knows the work is not finished. There are still battles to fight, still hearts to change. But she is ready.